Here's one fact for every Dragon Ball GT episode, starting with the Black Star Dragon Ball arc all the way to the Shadow Dragons. Don't forget to leave a like, and let's begin. Episode 1. Even though he wasn't heavily involved in the story, Akira Toriyama provided character designs for the main cast and most of the Z fighters. The first time we saw his GT designs was in Shonen Jump in 1995, showing the new looks for Goku, Trunks, and Pan, including an alternate color palette for GT Goku. Toriyama also designed Giru, and named the show himself, to mean Grand Tour. He did this for Z as well. This is also the first series logo without Shenron on it. Toriyama later explained that he wasn't very enthusiastic about creating the new material for GT and preferred to just let Toei handle the story. After all, he was pretty much done with Dragon Ball after writing the manga. Still, those few sketches became the foundation for GT's entire visual identity, as he also drew 3 illustrations featuring the GT trio on different planets to set the vibe. Also, the Pilaf Gang mechs in GT were actually inspired by German cars. Mice takes cues from the Volkswagen Beetle. Pilaf's features the signature twin grille of a BMW, and Shu's design is modeled after a tiny BMW Isetta 3-wheeler. For the Funimation dub, Dandan Kokoro Hikareteku was replaced with Step Into the Grand Tour, a rap song performed by Marcus Hall and written by Mark Menza, the composer for the replacement soundtrack of the series, who replaced Falconer Productions. Episode 2. With the gang going into space, we get the true kickoff of the series. Though, how old everyone is supposed to be here actually depends on who you ask. GT is kinda weird when it comes to timeline placement. The Japanese GT Perfect Files databook explained that it's been 5 years since the end of Z, while the dub says that it's been 10 years. You'd think that this would just be a dubism, but Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, the man responsible for character designs in GT, including Super Saiyan 4, mentioned in an interview with Anime Land in August of 1995 that it does take place 10 years after the end of Z. I stick with 5 personally, as it's the most commonly used in Japanese. There's also a nice little detail here, where Mr. Satan takes Pan out for coffee. Pan is the one to originally order coffee first, while Mr. Satan orders a sundae, but the waitress mixes them up, and they have to trade. Just a nice little character moment that kinda happens in the background. Episode 3. This episode features a new version of the Dragon Radar, and it's the first one not designed by Toriyama. The design only appears briefly before being absorbed by Giru, as he becomes the new Dragon Radar. This is also Giru's debut, and despite being a GT-only character, his design has inspired many others through games, especially in Dragon Ball Heroes, Xenoverse, and Online. The online one in particular is curious, since that game only had license for the manga, and couldn't use any anime-only content, so for Toriyama to make a new version of the design, he must have really liked it. The planet they're in is called Imega, or Imeka in English. It's derived from the Japanese word gametsui, which means greedy, which makes sense, since the entire planet is run on scams. Episode 4. GT Goku's instant transmission fails in this episode. This is one of our first looks at exactly why the anime staff decided to turn Goku into a kid. Writer of the majority of GT episodes, Atsushi Maekawa, explained this in a Q&A for the DVD release. It came from the concept of getting back to the series' roots. That is to say, by the end of Dragon Ball Z, which followed the story of the original comic, there was a sense that the animated series had already done battles to the utter limit. How, in creating new material from there, could we make it fun? Whether pursuing even fiercer battle was the correct direction or not. At this planning stage, the staff at the time were already really scratching their heads. In the midst of that, the idea came of, why not try to bring things back to a taste like that of original Dragon Ball? They'd set out on a journey in search of the Dragon Balls, in an atmosphere of both comedy and action. It truly is the style early on, except with a mightiest Goku who can do anything, who had already gone as far as he possibly could. The Dragon Balls would all be gathered together in a cinch. That's where we came up with the idea of, if we deliberately turn Goku back into a child, and give him various limitations, it'll open up the adventure even more. As a result of that idea having come up, we ended up deliberately turning Goku back into a child. Episode 5. This episode marked a first in Dragon Ball history, as it was the first Dragon Ball series to be broadcast entirely in stereo sound. For the original 1996 Japanese airing, every episode from here on out was mixed for stereo TVs, giving it a richer, more dynamic audio than Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. Ironically, Toei and Funimation would later use the downgraded mono optical tracks for every home release. This is also the first episode with a transformation in GT. Episode 6. This episode is actually built from one of Akira Toriyama's concept illustrations for the series, specifically one where Goku, Trunks, and Pan hide behind a giant glass bottle while towering aliens inspect their spaceship. The staff must have liked the imagery, since although the specific scene doesn't happen in the episode, that original drawing was repurposed into a shot in GT's third ending, Blue Velvet. The concept must have stuck with Toriyama, as in Dragon Ball Daima, the heroes would experience a similar event, with even bigger beings. The scene with Pan as a bee has also been adapted into Dokkan Battle through the event Pan's Secret Adventure, which gives more XP than most of the other events. Episode 7. This episode is a direct homage to an early Dragon Ball story. The heroes stumble upon a quiet village, living in fear of a giant creature who selects a bride from the townspeople. In the original series, the monster was a transformed oolong, but here, the role is filled by Zunama, a huge catfish who pretends that his whiskers cause earthquakes. They even have Trunks dress up as a woman to trick the monster, just like Goku did in the original. Zunama also isn't just a random monster. He's inspired by Namazu, a giant catfish from Japanese folklore. Stories say that Namazu lives beneath the earth and shakes its tail to cause earthquakes. Episode 8. This episode continues the Zunama story from the last one, and the references to the original anime too, as by the end of the episode, Goku has to stop the volcano with a Kamehameha, which just ends up destroying the whole place, similar to Roshi showing off the Kamehameha for the first time to put out the fires in Fire Mountain, and going overboard. The two of them also have the same reaction, with everyone flopping to the floor. Goku also uses the Kamehameha to propel himself and everyone else out of the water, just like in the Red Ribbon Army saga, though I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a direct reference or not. Episode 9. The Para Para brothers are a parody of Para Para, a real synchronized dance craze in Japan that began in the 80s and into the 90s, with strong ties to Eurobeat. Para Para dancing was huge in clubs and on TV around the same time GT was airing. It's known for choreographed arm movements and everyone performing the same routine. GT turns this trend into a body manipulation technique, where the Para Para brothers dance as they infect the GT crew with their never-ending groovy moves. This technique is rarely seen in video games, but you can use it in Xenoverse. Also, since we're talking about dance, and I'll never get to talk about this anywhere else, the Italian Dragon Ball release had replacement themes for the openings, and although I'm not usually a fan of replacing songs, these are super groovy, and I love them, especially the Dragon Ball GT one, performed by Giorgio Vanni. Shout out to my Italian watchers. Episode 10. One of the Lud sacrifices that's turned into a doll seems to have been an old member of the Frieza Force, while another looks like a dog wearing Gohan's clothes. There's also a section at the start of the fight with the worms, where they lack any kind of sound. It looks to be a mistake and they just forgot to add it, since they make noises like normal before and after the scene. The asteroid they fight in is called Bihei, and the worms are called Momas. Episode 11. Lord Lud in this episode is described as a god of destruction. This led to many jokes about it once Beerus was introduced in Battle of Gods. But it came full circle when in Dragon Ball Super, Toyotaro created Mule, the god of destruction of Universe 3, who pilots a mech named Moscow, modeled after Lud. Toyotaro also poked fun at this, with a sketch showing Whis having recruited Lud as a god of destruction while Beerus was asleep. Episode 12. This episode continues the Lud and Doltaki plot, with one of the creepiest moments in the entire franchise, as Doltaki plays dress-up with Pan. His name is a combination of the words doll and otaki, another word for otaku. Meanwhile, Goku and Trunks are dealing with a whip come to life. In the original Japanese, Cardinal Muchi Muchi and Muchi, the whip, are two separate beings, but the English dub recontextualizes their relationship to make them one and the same, with Muchi being his real form. This is also carried over to Dragon Ball GT transformation. Muchi comes from the Japanese word Muchi, which just means whip, while the cardinal's name of Muchi Mochi adds the word Mochi, which means to carry. Get it? Carrying the whip? Very clever, I know. Episode 13. The theme of babies and developing seems to be a recurring one through this arc, becoming more apparent with the connections between the machine mutants and Baby, since Lud is shaped like a robotic baby, and Baby himself not only has an obvious name, but his early designs show him as something similar to a fetus before slowly developing. In the Dragonball GT Perfect Files databook, Lud is said to be the strongest machine mutant, but that he was defeated by Goku before he could reach his full power. I would have assumed that Rildo, who is on the same page, was the strongest, but I guess it makes sense if he just didn't reach his full strength. Lud's name comes from the word doll in English, just backwards and changed a bit in translation. Episode 14. The chant Goku and the others use to sync up and escape from inside Lud is Katsudon, Tendon, Oyakodon, all of which are popular donburi dishes: pork cutlet rice bowl, tempura rice bowl, and parent and child bowl, chicken and egg. In the Funimation dub, this became Pepper Pot, Pickle Pot, Purple Pot. Episode 15. This is yet another episode based on one of the Toriyama pieces, with the trio going about a desert world, with the centipede antlions scattered about. The planet, Rodizi, comes from Deruze, meaning I'm leaving, though it was originally named Kara, meaning empty, according to the Shonen Jump, where this Toriyama image was originally published. I also want to mention the GT spaceship, since it plays an important role in this episode when it breaks down. It was designed by Toriyama with fairly detailed specifications about how it worked. For example, we see in this episode that the ship is fueled by its muscle and runs on water. This was specified by Toriyama in the original design sheet, along with the way it moves and flies between space and the atmosphere, that it can be turned back into a capsule form, and how the yellow orbs are the gravity control domes. Episode 16. The opening of this episode is a fake-out, featuring Pan and Giro playing a VR video game, where Giro kills Pan. This, of course, plays on the idea that Giro is in fact a traitor who's bringing the heroes to their doom. We also find out that the heroes sleep in the living room, in front of a giant TV. We've actually seen this before, as it's shown in one of the shots of the first opening, Hitori Janai, which I always found curious, since in this shot the TV is just showing a sky shot of Gohan's house. But if we look back at the original sketch for this, we can see that the original intention was to have Trunks playing a racing video game, and for whatever reason, they changed it. The name of planet M2 comes from machine mutant. Get it? M2? It was once inhabited by an advanced race, but were all murdered by Baby's machine mutants. Ironic, coming from a TOEFL. Episode 16.5. This one's a weird one. Funimation kicked off GT in the US and other English-speaking countries with a recap special that doesn't exist in Japanese. It condenses episodes 1 through 16 into a single episode to fast forward to when Baby is about to be introduced. This drops us in the middle of Planet M2, then flashes back through the arc. Because of this, GT effectively premiered at episode 17 in the US, though the skipped episodes aired later as the lost episodes. Thought it was worth mentioning, since I'm sure a lot of you grew up watching it. Episode 17. This was the first proper dubbed episode of GT to air on US TV, since Funimation skipped episodes 1 through 16. Along with the previous mentioned Grand Problem, this episode was included in the Game Boy Advance video cartridge as Dragonball GT Volume 1. If you really wanted to watch episode 17 of GT like that for whatever reason, a second volume seemed to have been planned, but never released. The cover also features Super Saiyan Goku and Gogeta, despite the fact that neither appear in the series for dozens of episodes. Episode 18. The battle against the Sigma Force. The members of this special team are Ribbit, Bizu, Nat, and Nace, who fuse into Super Mega Cannon Sigma. Well, everyone but Nat, who gets defeated by Pan. They are clearly supposed to be somewhat of a new spin on the Ginyu Force, even having their own special fighting pose. Their combined super form has 3 different variations: the normal fighting one, flight, and drill, named by the GT Perfect Files as Super Sigma 1, 2, and 3. Episode 19. Rildo uses his metal breath to turn Trunks into a slab of metal. This is a clear reference to Han Solo being frozen into carbonite in The Empire Strikes Back, while his liquid metal form seems to be a reference to Terminator 2. Rildo actually wasn't always a machine mutant, but rather a normal alien before being turned into one by Dr. Mew. The eldest Para brother looks similar to him, so I wonder if they belonged to the same race. Episode 20. In this episode, Rildo says that the only way to defeat him is if they get rid of all the metal on the planet. Despite this, and the fact that he's stronger than Majin Buu, a triple Kamehameha from Base, Goku, Pan, and Trunks will be enough to kill him, almost like his defeat became an afterthought. Additionally, we get a very rare shot of Super Saiyan 2 Goku in this episode, as he uses it to repel an attack from Rildo. His hair is clearly in Super Saiyan 2, and the power-up makes it seem like he's supposed to be using that. With all that being said, it seems like those behind the GT Perfect files didn't realize this, as the databook says that Goku never uses Super Saiyan 2 in GT. Episode 21. The battle against Rildo continues, and we get a really cool setting for the fight, a movie theater, something completely different from what we usually get in Dragon Ball. The movie playing is actually called Star Zone, and we can see a poster outside. The movie seems to be a reference to both Star Wars and Dragon Quest, as the main character on the poster is just straight up the hero from Dragon Quest III. Episode 22. The Baby Room, revealed at the end of the previous episode, looks like a reference to the Death Star core in Return of the Jedi. But it also changes slightly between its first appearance and this one, where it gains a starry sky and a pool of green liquid. This is also our first real episode with Baby, a character who takes heavy inspiration from a filler sequence, where King Kai told Goku about the wars between the Tsufurujins, known as the Tuffles in the dub, and the Saiyans. This backstory was actually written by Akira Toriyama himself, with designs of the ancient Tuffles and the Saiyans also drawn by him. However, Baby is further inspired by the Dragon Ball video game Plan to Eradicate the Saiyans and its OVA counterparts. A Tuffle scientist named Raichi poisons Earth and creates a super weapon from his hatred named Hachiak. Raichi and Mew are parallels, as are Baby and Hachiak, though it's later revealed that Baby is the one to be in control. In Dragon Ball Heroes, Baby and Hachiak even team up as Baby possesses him. Also, not a fact, but the ending of this episode is one of my favorites, as Baby erupts from Mew's back and crushes his head to reveal the one-star Dragon Ball. Episode 23. The Dragon Team wear the spacesuits designed for space travel to Namek for the first time in a long time, though the helmet has also been changed. Although not revealed in this episode, there are hints that the sick boy is possessed by Baby. As I mentioned before, the Dragon Ball he had was the one star, and this is the same one they find here. At the end of the episode, when they get the boy to planet Pital, a play on the word hospital, we see that Goku's fear of needles from a filler scene in episode 40 of Dragon Ball Z returns. Nice attention to detail. Episode 24. The hospital episode. When Trunks is attacked by Baby, he tries to push him off by using what appears to be Super Saiyan 2, thanks to the lightning, though it isn't necessarily consistent. As the first Saiyan to be possessed, Trunks also has a what-if card in Dragon Ball Heroes, where we can see a scenario where he became the main host instead of Vegeta, with Super Baby Trunks 1. Also completely unrelated, but the doctor from this episode always reminded me of Ice Shenron, because of the mustache, beard spikes, and the dot on his forehead. It can't be a coincidence, right? Did they look back at this guy and get inspired? Because look at him. Episode 25. This is the first time we check back on Earth since the team left for space, leaving the final 3 Dragon Balls to be nothing but a footnote. It's revealed that Goku and the others have been in space for 9 months, so they only have 3 months before Earth explodes, even though Chi-Chi says they have 4. She just can't count, I guess. This episode was aired 6 weeks after the last one, because of a bunch of sporting events, though Lord Slug did air the week prior. Still, the longest break between episodes so far. This is also the episode where Vegeta shaves his mustache, something Toriyama gave him when redesigning characters for the show. The Dragon Ball GT Perfect files reveal the reason as to why they chose to do this. When Vegeta first appeared with a mustache, everyone was shocked. In the middle of the story, his daughter Bola told him, "It looks ugly," so Vegeta immediately shaved it off. Actually, this scene was inspired by something said by the daughter of one of Toriyama's relatives. Vegeta looked more handsome without a mustache. When the staff heard this, they thought, "Oh, is that so? Then let's shave off his mustache." Episode 26. Baby starts taking over more and more people on Earth. It seems like Bulma has so much money that she got a clock made of Vegeta creating an energy sphere. Which, I mean, I would too. When Chi-Chi slaps Goten and he falls all over Bulma's display, he knocks down a bunch of little model kits of her various vehicles. Her car from the very start of the series, the plane from the Buu Saga, and her bike. Piccolo also makes his first appearance in GT, being the first person to sense something wrong on Earth. Episode 27. This episode changes the animation of the opening to add in a scene with the heroes fighting Baby. What's crazy is that it ends with Super Saiyan 4 Goku, a transformation that wouldn't appear until episode 34, so it just spoils the biggest thing in the whole series. The eye catches are also switched out, and the ending, Hitori Janai, is replaced with Don't You See. The shot of everyone walking, as if it's spine art, actually has 2 extra characters not shown, as the CD release of the song shows Baby Vegeta and Super Saiyan 4 Goku walking behind everyone. Bra also shows Vegeta's shaving kit, and it's being advertised by Toribot himself, Akira Toriyama's avatar. Episode 28. When Baby reveals himself to Trunks, in Japanese, he correctly says that they hadn't seen each other since Planet Pital, but the dub changes it to make it a mistake, as he says they haven't seen each other since Planet M2, which is just wrong. Giru is also blown away by Baby, and Pan's bandana is ripped up, but the next time we see them both, in episode 31, the bandana is completely fine, but Giru is still dead, and Pan gets to accidentally honor her great-grandfather by putting on the bandana off of her dead friend's body, just like Bardock. Giru's serial number is DB4649T2006RS, but in this episode, Baby abbreviates it to T2006, a reference to the Terminator numbering system. Episode 29. In this episode, Baby Vegeta fires an attack he calls the Big Bang Attack, but in the way he would a Final Flash. Although it seems to be a mistake, this is carried over to nearly every game Baby appears in. Also, this episode shows Baby Vegeta's next 2 forms, called Strongest Form 1 and 2. There is something curious about this, as they do seem to be mirrors to Vegeta's own Super Saiyans, but may also have been our first look at a Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. The moment Baby takes over Vegeta, we see him look like he does with any other, remaining in base form. It's only when he powers up into Super Saiyan that his appearance changes into what we normally know as Baby Vegeta. But if he's in Super Saiyan here, then that must mean that Super Baby is his equivalent to Super Saiyan 2. And Super Baby 2, well, while it doesn't look like the traditional Super Saiyan 3, he does lose his eyebrows, and his hair grows a bit. The most curious evidence to this theory is that the Dragon Ball GT Perfect files specifically say that this form is similar to Super Saiyan 3. The way I see it, this was Baby pushing Vegeta's body beyond his limits and creating a weird pseudo Super Saiyan 3 for himself. Episode 30. Sugoroku Space, the dimension Goku is dropped into, is named after the Japanese board game of Sugoroku. This bizarre realm is controlled by the caretakers, mysterious and powerful beings who even take Goku's power away. There he meets the so-called space lemurs, Sugoro and Shusugoro, a father and son duo trapped there after the ship was lost. The caretakers told them that if they won 540,000 games, then they'll be set free. While the English dub calls them lemurs, they're actually tanuki, shape-shifting raccoon dogs from Japanese folklore, known for being mischievous tricksters who disguise themselves, steal from people, and cause chaos for fun. In myths, tanuki are also said to have giant balls, which are often treated as symbols of good luck. Oh, and Goku is terrified of Chi-Chi and needles in this episode. Episode 31. This is the first appearance of a few characters in GT outside of endings, including Krillin, 18 Marin, and the Ox King, and the first appearance of Oob ever since episode 1. Krillin in particular had a completely different design made by Akira Toriyama, where he looks more like a farmer. 18 and Marin were not designed by Toriyama, meaning that Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru was responsible for them. My theory is that once he designed the girls, they chose to redesign Krillin to better match their aesthetic as city folk. Episode 32. The relationship between Oob and Boo is a parallel of that between Piccolo and Kami, especially in the way their fusion works, and how they originate from the same being, coming together to create a more powerful version of the main warrior. Though we know this form over here as Majub in Japanese, he's just known as Super Oob, which kinda makes sense, since it was Evil Boo absorbing Fat Boo that created Super Boo. In the flashback from the first episode, a new extra shot is added of Goku telling Oob that they'll fight again in 1 year. I also want to point out the score, as the theme for Majin Buu explaining their origin is very similar to the track Luke and Leia from Return of the Jedi. It's pretty nice. The soundtrack for GT was composed by Akihito Tokunaga, replacing Shunsuke Kikuchi, who retired after Z ended. Tokunaga composed 70 or so tracks when the series began, plus the soundtrack to Path to Power, and sadly did not compose anything else for the series as it continued. I do love the GT soundtrack, but but because he only made that first set, the tracks slowly become more and more repetitive. Episode 33. This is the first episode since episode 132 of the original Dragon Ball anime, where Goku has his tail, and the first time we see him in Super Saiyan with it, specifically Super Saiyan 3, which works out, since in Toriyama's original sketches for the form, Goku did have a tail. This will be the last time we see Goku in Super Saiyan 3 outside of flashbacks until Super. His tail does turn golden in Super Saiyan, though merchandise and games like Dokkan Battle show this as very inconsistent, even when depicting the same form. Episode 34. The Dragon Ball GT Perfect files mention that both Super Saiyan 4 and the Golden Ozaru, shown in this episode, could be considered the Super Saiyan's true form, also mentioning that there's a theory that the Ozaru was the ancestor of the Saiyans, before they evolved into their humanoid form. The flashback Pan has to her time at the World Tournament are reanimated from the end of Z, with many changes from the original, though the difference between the two could be chalked up to it being Pan's vision of the memories, rather than being 100% accurate, seeing how Goku isn't inside the building and is instead watching her with his GT outfit on. Episode 35. The first episode with Super Saiyan 4, after a very brief appearance in the previous episode. This form was designed by Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, inspired by kabuki performers, for the outline of the eyes. The original design sheet had some differences, such as the lack of fur on the belly, which Nakatsuru thinks was a suggestion from Toriyama. His arms also seem bigger in the design sheet, which is funny, seeing the direction Daima eventually went. Prior to the form's debut, the Cardass Cards magazine showed off a different color palette for the form, though this is pretty common for cards. Though they did try other colors beforehand. As Nakatsuru revealed, one of the other choices was a Super Saiyan 4 with golden hair. Episode 36. While dubbing the Kamehameha ×10 for this episode, Sean Schemmel, the English voice of Goku, passed out in the booth due to not having been sleeping well and working too much.
I was really tired, I hadn't been working, sleeping well, and I miscalculated the amount of air you need for a Kamehameha, I think.
Becoming a legend amongst Dragon Ball fans, who often mistake this story for it having happened during the Super Saiyan 3 transformation in Z. Episode 37. In this episode, Kibito Shin teleports to Earth by putting 2 fingers up to his forehead, like the instant transmission. But that's not Kibito Shin's technique. He instead has the Kai Kai, a technique which doesn't rely on locking onto ki, and doesn't use the 2 fingers anywhere outside of this episode, episode 40 of GT, and Budokai Tenkaichi 3 for some reason. So it seems like they just got it mixed up. Also, the plot point of the Ultra Divine Water is reused from the Garlic Jr. arc to release those possessed by Baby's influence, just like with the Dark Mist. Episode 38. In this episode, 4 Saiyans surround Goku, powering him up in a similar way to the Super Saiyan God ritual from much later on. The resulting form is called Super Full Power Saiyan 4. Yes, I didn't misspeak, it's pretty weird, and gets even weirder in Dragon Ball Heroes, where, with the help of another power gift from their counterparts, Xeno, Goku, and Vegeta get Super Full Power Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker, a further evolution of Super Saiyan 4 with pink hair. Everyone but Pan transforms into Super Saiyan when giving Goku power in this episode, obviously because she can't. But the Dragon Ball GT Perfect files actually teased at the possibility, saying if the same conditions shown in the right page are met, even Pan or Vegeta's daughter, Bra, should be able to transform into a Super Saiyan. When the greatest danger approaches, we might witness the first female Super Saiyan in history. Series producer Kozo Morishita also mentioned that if the episode where Pan was turned into a doll happened later in the series, then perhaps Pan would have turned into a Super Saiyan. Episode 39. The Defeat of Baby. He is done away with in a very Toei animation way. A Kamehameha to the sun. Toei loved having their original villains die this way. First Cooler, then Broly, even Lord Slug was defeated with a sun-powered spirit bomb. More importantly, the scene at the lookout, where the divine water is spread through the planet, has Don't You See, the second GT ending, as an insert song in the original Japanese. Episode 40. We get a ton of cameos in this episode. including Ader and Snow in Jingle Village, the King of Earth, the Pilaf gang at their destroyed castle, Bora, Upa, their family, and the others of the Karenga tribe, Korin, Yajirobe, Yamcha, Tien, Roshi, Oolong, Puar, Krillin, his family, and even Nam. In the English dub, Christopher Sabat voices the red-headed teenager at the arcade, who doesn't believe what's going on, using the same voice he uses for Kuwabara from Yu Yu Hakusho in the dub of that show.
No dice! Not dying! You're the only one in danger of dying here! If there's any way to bring you down, Takuro, I'll find it!
Since the two characters look very similar. Of course, Piccolo also passes away in this episode, in one of my favorite scenes in the series, giving up his life to make sure the Black Star Dragon Balls are also deactivated. Oh, and the main ship is clearly inspired by Star Wars. Love that design. Episode 41. This is an in-between episode before the proper Super 17 arc. For whatever reason, the World Tournament has re-implemented the Junior Division. Last time we saw it in Z, the tournament had gotten rid of it, after having implemented it during the 24th World Tournament. Seems like they just can't make up their minds. This is also yet another World Tournament loss for Goku, as he's lost against Jackie Chun, Tien, and ditched the competition during the 25th and 28th World Tournament, only to lose against Mowgli here. Yes, the kid's name is Mowgli, though, of course, he did win the 23rd. This is also the debut of a new superhero, Papaya Man, Oop's alter ego. This episode is almost never referenced anywhere, but it was referenced in the animated commercial for Dragon Ball Heroes Jakku Mission 4, where a bunch of random characters have a team tournament, and was going to be the tutorial level for Dragon Ball GT Transformation 2 before the game was cancelled. The Dragon Ball GT Special, A Hero's Legacy. Yeah, weirdly enough, this aired before the Super 17 arc, which is why the special opens with Baby's defeat before cutting to 100 years in the future. Although most often called Grandma Pan, she's actually Goku Jr.'s great-great-grandmother, as revealed in the last episode of GT, meaning that we have at least 2 generations in the family whom we don't know anything about. Tragically, it seems like the original film masters for this special have been lost by Toei. They weren't remastered for the Dragon Box DVD set, unlike every other episode. And if you watch it anywhere, it just looks worse than almost anything else in the franchise because of it. It's a real shame, but the audio sounds pretty good at least. Goku Jr. goes to Satan City Primary, the elementary school counterpart to Orange Star High, and the same school Beat goes to in the Heroes manga. Goku Jr.'s bully and eventual friend also makes a cameo in Victory Mission. Peter Mayhew, the actor who portrayed Chewbacca in Star Wars, voiced the reptilian demon in the English dub. And finally, the last scene with Grandpa Goku appearing before Goku Jr. was done because the staff already knew how GT was going to end. In fact, from the very start of the series, they knew they were going to leave it up to interpretation if Goku was alive or dead, and because of that, they could make a special that happened in the future, even before the series ended, according to producer Kozo Morishita. Episode 42. The gates of hell are opened by Jiro and Mew, and 17 attacks Trunks. There is a weird quirk here, where Trunks says that 17's ki feels similar to 18's, since he's never met 17 in this continuity, though he shouldn't be able to sense him since he's an android. Also, in between now and episode 1, the last time we saw King Kai, it seems like his planet was just restored off screen. Of course, Dragon Ball Super had something similar, though we get an explanation for that in a bonus chapter. It's weird because by the final Spirit Bomb, King Kai is back at the Grand Kai's planet. I honestly think this shot was just a mistake. There's also a ton of cameos of past villains invading Earth. These include Raditz, Cooler, Sergeant Metallatron, Android 19, Pui, Yakon, General Rildo, Jaice, Babidi, Rikum, Kui, Goldo, Apul, King Cold, Zarbon, and Dodoria, though we will see more in the next few episodes. This is also the first episode with ending 3, Blue Velvet. Episode 43. The weird Frieza and Cell episode. The resurrection of F and C, if you will. This continues the references by focusing on past actions, such as Cell's upper half being blown away by a Kamehameha, Frieza being cut in half by a Death Saucer, Goku using a spike from hell like the Power Pole, Nappa destroying a city like when he first arrived on Earth. They're pretty fun. Cell has also learned to use his tail again in his perfect form, something he couldn't do in Z. A lot more Cybermen than those defeated on Earth appear in the city, though obviously there's been plenty of Cybermen outside of that instance. Episode 44. This episode reveals that Piccolo went to heaven, but forced his way to hell in order to help Goku. This marks the first time Vegeta uses the final Shine attack, and the first foreshadowing to the Shadow Dragon arc, with the Dragon Balls cracking. This is also the fourth death of Krillin in the series. First with Tambourine, then Frieza, then Super Buu, and now 17. Super 17 also uses the Flash Bomber in this episode, an attack which you can actually give to Dragon Ball Super 17 in the partner customization in Xenoverse 2. Episode 45. Goku escapes hell with the help of Piccolo and Dende by reusing the idea of syncing up with a chant, like the Lord Lud situation. This episode marks the final time Goku would transform into a Super Saiyan in the first 3 original anime series, since he just uses Base and Super Saiyan 4 from the next episode onwards. It also shows one of the only 2 kills Super 17 gets, this time Jiro. The second will be Dr. Mew. Gohan also fights 17 here, but he was supposed to have his own mini story arc around these events. According to scriptwriter Atsushi Maekawa, in GT, he's a scholar who's given up fighting almost entirely. But for someone who had given up fighting like that to return to the front lines, I thought that naturally, there needed to be quite a bit of drama involved. Around the Super 17 arc in the animation, he came back as a super warrior all of a sudden. But actually, I personally wanted to put a more heroic episode telling the reason why he started fighting again. For instance, people he loved, like Videl, had been hurt, and when in the depths of anguish, he happened to open up his wardrobe. Inside was his dogi from fondly remembered times, together with the line, "To think there'd come a day I'd wear this again." He brushes off Chi-Chi, who in tears is trying to stop him, and makes a shocking, lightning entrance on the battlefield. Considering the status of the character, I wanted to spend 1 or 2 episodes showing that level of resolve, and I recall having even written the plot for it. But it's a subplot that diverges from the main story, I guess you could say. So due to various circumstances, it never came to fruition, and it ended up stopping at the level of he takes off his glasses and takes on the eyes of a warrior. Episode 46. This is one of the only fights in Dragon Ball that takes characters all over the globe, since most just happen across a couple of locations. It's pretty cool. This is also one of the only times we see the Great Saiyaman 2. We first saw her in a filler episode at the end of the Buu arc, then in Wrath of the Dragon, and finally here. When Videl is putting on her suit, we can see a Piccolo plush in one of the boxes. Chi-Chi also wants to help out, wearing pots and pans. She was actually supposed to be a playable character like this in the cancelled GT Transformation 2. This is also the first time the Kamehameha x 10 is shown as red. Episode 47. In the Funimation dub, it looks like Android 18 survived 17's blast by sheer luck. It's not really explained, but in the original version, 17 is intentionally holding back his power because he doesn't want to risk setting off the bomb that used to be inside of 18, not knowing that Krillin already wished it away. For whatever reason, the dub just removed the explanation. This is also the first use of the Dragon Fist outside of the movie. Also, although Super 17 dies in this episode, the final wish made at the end of the series actually revives the original 17, as explained in the GT Perfect Files. Episode 48. The birth of the Shadow Dragons and the start of the final arc. The line from the old Kaioshin in the Buu arc, where he warns that the Dragon Balls alter the natural order of things, was retroactively used as a way to tease this set of villains. Mr. Popo reveals to everyone that this has actually happened before on a different planet, meaning that somewhere out there in the distant past, a civilization overused the Dragon Balls. I wonder what they were like. The old Kai also mentions that the Earth is isolated from the rest of the universe because of the Shadow Dragons, and no one can teleport in. This is left out in the dub. It also seems like those behind the scenes just forgot Bola existed, since she was here last episode, and now she's not, and she doesn't appear for the rest of the series. Episode 49. The Shadow Dragons have a different naming scheme based on the language. In English, they spell out the word Shenron: Sin, Haze, Ice, Nova, Rage, Oceanus, and Naturon. In Japanese, the dragons are simply named after the Dragon Balls, which are called by the Chinese numbering system, but translated into Japanese. For example, Ice Shenron is just the one-star dragon. We also find out that every dragon was created by a specific wish. This 2-star dragon was created from the wish to bring Bora back to life in the Red Ribbon Army arc. Episode 50. The battle against Ice Shenron. In this episode, Goku calls the dragon his brother, because it was the wish to revive Goku that created him. This actually has a double meaning, because he was revived due to his death in battle against his real brother, Raditz. Also, in Dragon Ball Heroes, the Shadow Dragons return, but specifically speaking of Victory Mission, Ice Shenron is killed by being pierced through the chest by Super Saiyan 4 Broly. I just always thought this panel was insane. Episode 51. Oceana Shenron time. She was born from the wish by Oolong for panties, the very first wish in the series. Her humanoid form is named Princess Oto, in what's a reference to Otohime, a character from Japanese folklore, specifically from the story of Urashima Taro. In the legend, Urashima saves a turtle and is taken to an underwater palace, the Dragon Palace, where he meets a beautiful princess named Otohime. In Dragon Ball Heroes, she gets a powered-up form with wings on her head. I didn't mention it before, but the other dragons, like Haze and even the twins, also get super forms. Oceana's is just the coolest one. This is also the first episode with the final GT ending, Subitsuita Machine Gun, my absolute favorite GT song. Episode 52. Naturon Shenron. He was created by the wish to revive those killed by Vegeta at the World Tournament, early in the Buu Saga. There's something of an interesting scene here, where Goku can't push back a building in base, and has to transform into Super Saiyan 4 to do it. It's just kinda funny. Also, Naturon Shenron mentions that the Dragon Ball is part of himself, but when he's defeated in the next episode, he's still alive without it. Episode 53. The fight against Naturon continues. When the dragon fires his Kamehameha, the building that's hit is actually a real building, the famous Fuji TV Orb, the station which aired Dragon Ball. It's appeared in the series before, though my favorite is in the crossovers between Dragon Ball and One Piece, called Kyutai Panic Adventure. Oh, and this episode gave us this hilarious scene.
Fight back! Fight back!
Episode 54. Enter Nova Shenron. He was created by the wish for eternal youth from King Piccolo, the only wish made by a villain that created a dragon. Maybe because of that, his personality is the opposite of the rest, being compassionate and noble, the opposite of his wish, as well as the fact that he is the 4-star ball, the most important one to Goku. He's also the final dragon to reveal which wish he was made from, in the show itself. Episode 55. This episode is framed around Vegeta's view of himself, with plenty of clips from the past, and his history with Goku. Vegeta mentions the possibility of Super Saiyan 5 by name, and I wonder if he ever tried to get to it after the end of the series. The GT Perfect files mention that, when seeing her husband having given up on surpassing Goku, Bulma developed the Ultra Bloodswave Generator, based on her research for Baby. It mentions that with Super Saiyan 4, his power is finally equal to Goku's, and that the love between husband and wife gave birth to a super warrior. Episode 56. Although he made a brief appearance in a previous episode, this is where Ice makes his real debut. He never explains what his wish is, but we do get images of the wishes when the Shadow Dragons first appear, and it looks like his was the wish to have everyone forget about Majin Buu, which the Perfect Files confirms. Like his brother, Ice does have a shell form, but he only uses it for a little bit. Him and Nova are the only dragons not to have the Dragon Ball visible on themselves, but he does take it out eventually. Episode 57. The final dragon, Sin Shenron, finally appears. Just like with Ice, his wish is never revealed, but the GT Perfect files mentioned that it was the wish to revive everyone killed by Frieza and his men on Namek, one of the largest wishes in the series. Sin went through a few design changes by Nakatsuru before settling on the one we know, with these two being shown in the Dragon Box DVD book. Goku also uses my favorite version of the Dragon Fist in this episode, marking the second use of it in GT, but we still have one left. Episode 58. When Sin absorbs the other Dragon Balls and transforms into Omega Shenron, his original English voice, Bob Carter, is replaced with Chris Sabat. This is fitting, since Chris voices both Piccolo and Shenron himself, and of course Vegeta, Yamcha, etc. Even though his new form is given a proper name in English, in Japanese, he's simply known as Super 1-Star Dragon. Episode 59. As the title spoils, Vegeta finally reaches a new form, but him and Gogeta's Super Saiyan 4 were planned from the very moment Goku's Super Saiyan 4 appeared. as explained in the GT Perfect files. When Goku's Super Saiyan 4 transformation was decided, the idea of Vegeta transforming as well, and even the idea of fusion between the two, were already being planned. Originally, the staff thought of Vegeta as a character who represents the same Saiyan side as Goku. Because of that, they considered that if Goku transforms, Vegeta should transform too. Vegeta's Super Saiyan 4 design went through quite a few changes until they settled on this one, as you can see here. It's also strange that Vegeta is mostly just a regular Ozaru through the transformation. We only see the Golden Great Ape for a split second. This is also the final episode with Tadayoshi Yamamuro as animation supervisor until the Revival era, and Goku uses the final Dragon Fist, an underrated one in my opinion. Episode 60. Gogeta returns after his initial appearance in Fusion Reborn, this time as suggested by Vegeta. According to GT writer Atsushi Maekawa, by the end of GT, the story was meant to focus on the two men whose history shaped the series, Goku and Vegeta. Goku doesn't really change as a person, but Vegeta does. Over time, Vegeta stops seeing Goku as someone he has to reject, and starts viewing him as a true equal. Maekawa says that the distance between them gradually shrank, and that is why the scene was written the way it was. It's not because Goku has changed, but because Vegeta has changed more and more that he sees him this way. The prideful man, who had always continued to refuse Goku, gradually came to accept him. Because of that emotional growth, Vegeta himself suggests fusion. Maekawa even admitted that it took courage as a writer to make Vegeta say it. Naturally, you'd expect opinions on this to be split, so to actually go as far as to have Vegeta say that was a decision that took quite a bit of courage. So basically, this is supposed to be the payoff to his entire character arc. Nakatsuru chose the hair color for Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, simply because the iconic color related to Super Saiyan 4 is red. The GT Perfect files also confirm that Gogeta was not bluffing when he said that he could defeat Omega with a single finger, and that he's the strongest warrior across galaxies and dimensions. There's also a scene where Oop shows up to ask to fuse, and everyone looks at him like he's crazy. They also just never checked up on him after he was defeated. It's kind of sad. Justice for my boy. Episode 61. Goku swallows the 4-star ball in one of the strangest moments in the series.
I'll just do what you do. Kakarot!
There's a scene where the old Kai is listening to music. In the dub, he listens to and hums the GT rap.
Sister.
While in the original Japanese, he's listening to Dandan. What's funny is that in the DVD, if you choose to watch the show in the English dub, but with Japanese music, then there's a mismatch between what he hums versus what he listens to.
Sister.
Episode 62. Nova Shenron returns thanks to Goku's body purifying the Dragon Ball, similar to Gogeta cleansing the world from negative energy, and what the Genki Dama will do after. Nova was also going to be playable in GT Transformation 2 before being cancelled, and was planned to have a passive ability where his body heat would hurt enemies on contact. But he's thankfully one of the few Shadow Dragons that does show up in video games, including Dragon Ball Fusions, where he can fuse with Goku to create Nova Goku. Episode 63. This is one of my favorite episodes in GT, as Vegeta tells his family and friends to escape while he buys them time, living to fight another day. Yet the Saiyans return to help out. A great scene. And of course, the final Spirit Bomb. The Genki Dama sequence features many characters from this adventure. The Parapara brothers, the civilians from Planet Omega, Don Ki and his underlings, the giant, Tsunama's village, Planet Pital, and the Namekians. You may notice that Goku takes no damage from Omega while holding up the Spirit Bomb, and his ki seemingly disappears. This is obviously left up for interpretation, and I have a full video explaining in detail what went down. But Atsushi Maekawa explained, in that episode, Goku, who takes Yi Shinlong's attacks, sinks to the bottom of a deep hole. That is the turning point. Afterwards, Goku still continues to battle, but what's different from before is that he's cloaked in an aura that won't let any attack near him. It might be that he died there, or it might be that he became something else entirely. I'll leave that decision to the imagination of everyone who watched. However, that Goku up to that point that everyone knows clearly does not appear after that. In the world of Dragon Ball, Goku had already died multiple times, and up until then, each time he appeared with a halo over his head. However, I didn't want to go with the usual concept of, even when he dies, he comes right back to life. I wanted the viewer to picture death in that way, and feel a sadness close to it in reality. So I had a change come over Goku, and then after that, once he defeats Yi Shenron and grants the final wish, Goku goes right off with Shenron and the Dragon Balls, to somewhere that people definitely can't get to, while wishing that people will be able to get by on their own strength in a world without the Dragon Balls, and Vegeta is the only one who notices where he's headed. Episode 64. The final episode. Goku leaves with Shenron, seeing some friends along the way. In the recap, the narrator calls Goku number 1, just like Vegeta did in the Buu arc. The line Goku says to Shenron about his back being warm was planned from the very early stages of the series, and although it's up to interpretation where exactly Goku goes, Maekawa has said that he likes to think that Goku does show up to see Chi-Chi from time to time, while Masako Nozawa, Goku's Japanese voice, explained, "Riding on Shenron means that Goku's going to leave this world and go to the world of the gods." I was glad that they didn't write it plainly that he died though. I feel like that Goku probably went to Shenron's place and is training again. Maekawa has also explained that he got a lot of letters from sad fans about Android 17 not being returned to life, but he clarified that he did plan on having a scene of him being revived, and it even had dialogue, but they had to cut it. Still, the GT Perfect files clarify that he was indeed revived. In fact, all of the people who were killed ever since the gates of hell opened were restored to life, though the world remained destroyed, as Goku agreed with Shenron that, from then on, humanity will have to rebuild and fend for themselves. It's kinda poetic, the Dragon Balls and Goku leaving Earth, just like Dragon Ball itself was leaving us at the time. The original airing of the final walk and montage displayed a credits roll as a thank you to every major voice actor in Dragon Ball through the series run. Sadly, it wasn't restored into future releases. And finally, Dragon Ball GT ended in a full circle moment, as it was replaced with the Dr. Slump reboot anime. This would mark the final Akira Toriyama show for this time period. GT ended with a small animation of Goku high-fiving Rayleigh as the time slot was given to her. This time slot had been reserved specifically for Toriyama's work since April 8th, 1981, with the original Dr. Slump anime, and would end on September 22nd, 1999. It really was a full circle. Nearly 20 years of Akira Toriyama on the same TV station, the same day, the same time. Truly, one of the greatest to ever do it. I want to leave you with Toriyama's comment from the Dragon Ball GT DVD box. Being a lazy bum by nature, I was absurdly happy when I managed to safely finish up Dragon Ball serialization and finally be released from the deadline hell. The TV anime people wanted to continue just for a little bit more, but I just couldn't do any more of that. And so, I left the Dragon Ball anime completely up to the anime staff, story and all. That was Dragon Ball GT. In car lingo, GT means Gran Turismo, a fast, high-powered car in other words. But in this case, I had GT mean Grand Touring, a great journey, since the scenario was that they'd be running around the universe. For GT, all I did was come up with the title, design the initial main cast, and some of the machines. I also did a few images. However, I was able to rest easy, handing things over to the excellent staff, who had continued on Dragon Ball for all this time. In particular, the animator Nakatsuru-kun is amazingly skilled, and mastered the peculiarities of my drawings in no time at all, to the point where there were even times where I couldn't tell whether I had drawn a certain character design or if he had. For instance, one of Nakatsuru-kun's designs was Super Saiyan 4, which appears in GT, and the picture above is a portrait that I drew looking off of it. Did I draw it well? Dragon Ball GT is a grand side story of the original Dragon Ball, and it'll make me happy for us to watch and enjoy it together. Akira Toriyama. And that was one fact for every Dragon Ball GT episode. That means that we've covered Dragon Ball Z, Super, and GT. So I'll begin working on the original series soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to Kamehameha times 10 that subscribe button. And if you're looking for more deep dives into Dragon Ball, check out my video going through every single cancelled Dragon Ball video game.